War. What is it good for? That was the question posed by Edwin Starr in his 1969 countercultural hit. The answer to the question, as mentioned in the song, was apparently that it was good for absolutely nothing. But I suspect that in 1969, Edwin Starr had not expected the likes of Activision and Electronic Arts to have perfected the fine art of milking a franchise for all it's worth. Also, war's good for loads of things, like the military-industrial complex for one and arms dealers. There have been hundreds of war-themed games throughout the years covering anything from ancient warfare all the way through to the advanced warfare envisioned in fictional but grounded near-future settings. Those ones have mainly been crap though, let's be honest. The FPS genre has covered this particular type of game very extensively, and arguably the game that kicked off an absolute avalanche of these types was Medal of Honor, released on PlayStation in 1999 by Dreamworks Interactive. That's not to say that Medal of Honor was the first to cover the period in first person. Wolfenstein 3D beat it by many years, although probably not too historically accurate. I'm talking about you, Cyborg Hitler. What I'm talking about though is a first-person shooter cut from the same cloth as the likes of Call of Duty and Battlefield. The game was envisaged by legendary film director Steven Spielberg, who's said to have been heavily influenced watching his own son play GoldenEye on the N64. While most parents might have been concerned at watching their little one systematically shoot a soldier in every limb before putting him out of their misery, Steven instead was inspired. After all, the game demonstrated a level of precise aiming and hit detection on body parts hitherto unseen. So Steven thought, I'll nick that thanks, and dust those particular mechanics featured in Medal of Honor. The precise aiming stuck around and evolved throughout the years, but the body part hit detection thing took a bit of a hiatus for a few years until the effect became a bit more subtle in later games of the genre. With the exception of Medal of Honor Underground released the following year, this was, at least for me, Medal of Honor at its finest. It was a time before EA did what they do best and ran the franchise into the ground by releasing a new mediocre game every 5 minutes. EA aren't the only guilty parties here, but that's the thing, you get so far behind under canon that you just stop being invested in it. It was also a particular shame that the precise aiming also disappeared in the Medal of Honor games that came after, which was one of the things that made it more satisfying and challenging to play. Though it did return with down-the-barrel aiming in some later titles, this was out that Call of Duty had perfected that mechanic, which in my opinion is one of the many reasons that franchise has been so successful over the years. The game centres on Lieutenant James Patterson, recruited by the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, to run covert missions to hamper the German war effort. There are 7 overarching missions in total comprising several sub-missions, aimed at completing different phases of an overall objective. These range from acquiring intelligence from a downed Allied plane to sabotaging the German V-2 rocket. The game isn't without its flaws though. For example, you often get snagged on bits of scenery when navigating around. At times you'll feel like a stuffed bear trying to parkour through a Velcro factory. That gets a bit frustrating, especially when trying to jump onto raised platforms, or popping in and out of cover when gunfighting with the Germans. Another little problem I encountered was with the hitboxes on some of the scenery. You'll often fire through a small window or gap to find that the bullet has hit some invisible geometry, leaving a bullet hole suspended in midair, whilst the bleeding enemies seem to be able to freely fire back at you unhindered. Some of the level design is quite unsophisticated too, but I suspect that was born more from the limitations of the hardware than anything else. This is in addition to the view distance in the game being just barely beyond the end of your nose. Luckily, the Germans have a similar nearsightedness and won't often see you until you enter the draw distance of the game. Their hearing is much more acute however, and if you're blundering through the game making more racket than a skeleton in a trash can bashing his bishop, then you'll find a steady stream of bullets coming your way out of the great black nothingness just ahead of you, which puts you at a particular disadvantage. There are also a few niggles with some of the sub-objectives, some of which involve hunting down or switching a lever. Sometimes they're a bit difficult to discern from other parts of the scenery, being that they're often just textures painted onto a flat surface like stickers on a Lego model. You'll end up finding the exit to a level, only to have to backtrack to find something you'd missed on your initial run-through. Some of these sub-objectives you think might be optional, such as picking up a cache of weapons, but if you exit the mission without picking them up, you'll fail the entire bleeding thing and have to restart. The controls can be a bit clunky at times too. Whilst the game emulates GoldenEye's aiming mechanics so that you're not hip firing everywhere like John Wayne in a western, the aiming can be a bit slow and somehow oversensitive at the same time. It doesn't quite have that precision that the N64's analog stick had. This problem can be compounded by the enemies moving at breakneck speed left and right when alerted. It's like trying to swat a fly with a noodle. It's not all bad though. There is a controller configuration that you can choose which offers the closest thing to a modern FPS experience that I've ever seen in a first-person game of that era. This is exactly as it sounds. Move forwards or backwards and strafe left and right with the left analog stick, and look up and down turning left and right with the right stick. X button jumps, right trigger fires, R1 is action button and L1 aims. It's as intuitive a layout as you'll ever get from a PS1 game, and it actually makes the game a lot more playable today, as we've all gotten used to that standard of button config. One of the places the game really shines is in the audio department, except for that military drum roll that you hear in the menus that seems to be about 80 decibels higher than any other sound in the game. It's more hazardous than listening to death metal while operating a jackhammer. The music's composed by Michael Giacchino, who worked on proper films like The Incredibles, Doctor Strange and Rogue One. The sound design is excellent too. In the catacombs level near the start of the game, it really felt like the tunnels were crawling with Nazis and vicious dogs, threatening to come down on you at any point. This made for a seriously great atmosphere that gives the illusion that you're immersed in something much bigger. Another element that really stood out for me was the stealth missions. These weren't just sneaking about undetected. You were an undercover officer that would have to flash your credentials to curious Nazis to get through locked doors and progress through the level to enact your various sabotage activities. It is quite laughable, however, that the Nazis appear to have the short-term memory of an absent-minded goldfish, inquiring after your papers every time you come within their field of view. Another clever element to these levels is that if you were going to assassinate an officer, you'd have to make sure to do it out of view and earshot of others, else the level stops being a stealthy one, alarms sound and you'll have to fight your way through a bucket load of Aryan aggressors. The later game becomes seriously action-packed and will have you, a one-man army, taking on overwhelming numbers in a last-ditch effort to prevent a German mega-weapon from being used against the Allies, the culmination of everything you've been working towards throughout the game. At this point, your arsenal will have expanded to include a rocket launcher, using it in combination with other weapons much more tactically, and you'll take serious health hits, which will have you scrounging around for medical kits, like that one mate everyone seems to have had who never brings his own cigarettes out with him. And if you didn't have that one mate, you are probably that one mate. Unless you don't smoke, of course, in which case, well done. Those things will kill you. The game isn't really a gritty portrayal of war in all honesty, and you might be tempted to think that Spielberg was in his Saving Private Ryan mindset in the late 90s, but this game features more like the PG Nazis straight out of an Indiana Jones film. It's very much more a love letter to 1940s and 50s Hollywood. There is some attempt to educate the gamer with many of the cutscenes featuring archive footage around various aspects of the war, but these are juxtaposed with 40s propaganda-style images that romanticised war and the collective spirit of a nation's effort to fight the axis of evil. These are more like the Nazis in sitcoms like Hello Hello or Dad's Army.
We have found these two lurking in the kitchen.
I see. What are these?
This is Fifi and Gigi.
I've not seen these two before.
No, and it is not easy to miss the one on the left with the big Charlies.
Even the voices are over-the-top caricatures.
What unit are you from?
Sorry, sir.
This doesn't
Sorry,
make the game
sir.
especially bad by any means. In fact, to be honest, it's quite refreshing for a game to be slightly less serious on the subject. I'm just not completely sure that was the original intention. Everything behind the scenes points to the game being intended as a respectful depiction of the period. Having said that, maybe they did know what they were doing, as evidenced by the slightly tongue-in-cheek promotional video featured in the game.
Ihre Papiere, bitte. Your papers, please. Verzeihung, aber Sie haben Ihre Granate vergessen. Excuse me, but you forgot your grenade. Der Amerikaner hat Hundekuchen in der Tasche. The American has dog biscuits in his pocket. Rennt euer Leben. Hat ne Panzerfaust. Run for your lives. He has a bazooka.
Medal of Honor also includes a pretty good split-screen multiplayer mode that back in the day saw you pitted against friends and family in 1v1 deathmatch scenarios. This was made more fun by unlocking passwords by accomplishing various feats in single player. This meant you could unlock various game modes and characters that can be used in the multiplayer game, such as Winston Churchill, William Shakespeare, a dog, and even a velociraptor. What's more, you can even unlock special multiplayer power-ups that will have various effects, such as granting the ability for lower gravity jumps, 4 times damage, bouncing bullets, and more. It makes 2-player split screen seriously more fun. This will have you coming back to single-player modes to challenge yourself to get better ratings to unlock more goodies time and time again. Summing up this flawed masterpiece, Medal of Honor remains a testament to the enduring appeal of any World War II themed game. And while it may show its age in certain aspects, its blend of thrilling action, immersive audio design, and quirky multiplayer modes ensures it holds a special place in the hearts of gamers who fondly remember its heyday. Whether you're a veteran to the series or a newcomer looking to explore gaming history, Medal of Honor offers something that's both nostalgic and entertaining, reminding us of the legacy of war-themed games in the gaming landscape. Until next time, auf Wiedersehen. Oh, and hop on.